Hello, welcome back to our course Natural Resources and Management in Latin America. Uh, Today we're gonna see the trends of politics in the 21st century. As we've seen so far, Latin American politics seems to move in some sort of pendulum, moving into nationalist, populist movements or more liberal, export oriented ones. And all these movements have seemed to move along the waves of commodity prices. This is how important commodity prices are in the political economy of the region. The double transition that we've seen that occur in the 1980s raised certain expectations about political economic rights of citizens. As one president, Raúl Alfonsín from Argentina, said, with democracy we eat, we cure, and we live. This is so important, this statement, the expectation that arose. However, as we already know, the 1980s were difficult times for the region. Commodity prices were depressed, and that brought new challenges to the economic stability of these newborn democracies. So we had, on the one hand, political rights, but on the other hand, social rights got worse. Poverty levels increase, unemployment increase, social exclusion in general increase. So all of these led to increasing disenchantment with the political establishment and the elections of new political leaders. In the 1990s, with the Washington Consensus, as we've seen, economic stability got back. However, this political disenchantment grew. So, by the opening of the new century and the accumulation of several economic crises, you may remember the tequila crisis in 1995, the Southeast Asian financial crisis in 1997, Thailand, then Brazil 1999, Argentina 2001. Seems that all these, the economic model of the Washington Consensus reached its limits. So with the turn of the new century and the new millennium, the pendulum moved again towards the emergence of new or more progressive governments that start to challenge the economic orthodoxy of neoliberalism. So what we had in these major changes is the transition on the one hand to political democracy at the same time with neoliberals or the Washington Consensus. Back to the market and back to democratic politics. The clear success story that we have of that period is Chile. At the beginning it was Argentina, but then it failed with debt, over indebtedness of the economy. But if we have to take one example of this, is Chile, with a stable economy, with social indicators that improve in the next 25 years after the transition in 1990, economic stability and economic growth. However, they do not deliver on their promises. Chile today is one of the most, is ranks in 14th in the most unequal countries in the world. So it had ameliorated, and this is the best case, but it did not deliver on the promises of the Washington Consensus. So these 1990s, there were unimpressive growth rates that they promised, The poverty and inequality of the 1990s, 80s, sorry, persist with high unemployment and fewer social services. So there was some more economic activities, but it was more concentrated, and seems that the majority of the population got marginal to all these processes. Privatization helped in this process of concentration, and so on and so forth. Um, it did not mean that it was necessarily worse than the ISI model that we've seen um, before, but it got worse in terms of poverty, inequality, and exclusion. So, as I already mentioned, the criticism to the Washington Consensus on the neoliberal policies started to grow. It became evident the enlargement of shanty towns or villa miserias in major cities in the world, paired with new, brand new skyscrapers. These tensions start to grow in already unequal societies. So by the beginning of the new millennium, people started to find itself with problems, but they wanted change within democracy. They didn't have a problem with democracy, but they had a problem with the way democracy worked. I already mentioned this, uh, the meager economic growth, with only Chile performed well, and the Chile and the Dominican Republic. Um, so it seemed that this was the development of the new model of electoral democracy with exclusion, some sort of Indian kind of uh, democracy. However, these people, they still have the right to vote. People want to change. They started to organize, and there was an emergence of new leaders that challenge the policies of the Washington Consensus. The first one, and the most important one, was Hugo Chavez, and won the election in 1998 after several decades of stagnation uh, and decay of the party system, in the Punto Fijismo system in Venezuela. He managed to capture the social unrest and propose a new model, and he won the elections. So he's the first one, and then Lula da Silva in Brazil, and then the Kirchner, and then in Argentina, then Evo Morales in Bolivia, Rafael Correa in Ecuador, and there was a new movement of the pendulum towards leftist governments. This is I want to, and I uploaded a very provocative short article that of Jorge Castañeda, that he says actually there are two lefts. There's not one left. I'm not saying that I agree with that. I actually don't, but it's a very interesting exercise on two models of left that emerged. He said that there was a one left that it was more modern, open-minded, reformist, internationalist, but they were still orthodox economic. That basically they respect uh, the budget balances, and they want to solve the problem of the poor, but they want to do it in an inclusive manner, and one step at a time. In this group, he included Michelle Bachelet, Lula da Silva, Tabaré Vázquez, or Pepe Mujica later in Uruguay. And then there was another left that is more traditional, with traditional like Cold War mindset, radical nationalist, is us or the evil. You might remember Hugo Chavez saying at the UN General Assembly, saying, "I smell sulfur," when George Bush entered the assembly. You may remember that kind of anecdotes, the populists appealing to nationalist sentiments in the region. They have a state-oriented policies, and the author says that they care about the poor, but only to use this as use them as a tool in order to maintain power. In this group, he puts Evo Morales, Chavez, and Kirchner. We can discuss in class what do we really think about this. Um, but if it is the left right is better, why it is so? I mean, don't you? There's some. It should at least raise some expectation. Like, oh, we like the ones that are closer to the U.S., and we like lesser the ones that are farther to the U.S. I don't know. I'm bringing that question to you. Um, so what is important is the this wrong left. Hellinger, there is a reading that you have. He invites us also to understand that they are the defenders of the majority rule. They are both. None of them have been there by a military coup. They also defend the excluded. That's not a minor thing. One of the things that I recall from visiting Venezuela is a poor person, said, I'm an adult, 55 years old, and it's the first time in my life that I've seen a doctor, a medical doctor. It's the first time that someone came to me with a constitution saying you're a citizen, you have your rights. So these are tensions that are important to have, just to have nuance of how processes occur. They were lucky enough, these leftist movements, as you can see in the graph, is that in with the new millennium, the largest commodity boom probably in history occurred in Latin America. Occurred in the world, sorry, but Latin America was highly benefited. So these people not only had these ideas, but also now they have the resources to fund those policies. So the commodity lottery of the 21st century, the Latin America became really benefited by it, having the leaders of the world of all major minerals and also agricultural products in the world. That meant a massive windfall of revenues coming into Latin American coffers. That made these governments also look successful and have the fiscal muscle to implement their policies. This is how they all got re-election. They had the strength to reform constitutions and to implement the policies that they wanted. There is a whole debate how they did it, and actually now, currently, with all the public demonstrations we see on the streets, important social concerns on how they did things. One objective measurement is that society did better. If you compare the social indicators of the 1990s compared to the 2012, you see that poverty and extreme poverty dramatically decreased in the region. There was a massive social improvement. We had at least 70 millions of new middle class in Latin America. However, what we've seen in the last 2 years, I'm sorry that we don't have much time to spend discussing all that period, but most of our course will be debating that economic boom and how they manage that boom, right? Because now what we have in Latin America is that in the last 2 years, commodity prices have gone down with massive uh, economic and political impacts in the region. Now we have the Kirchner that lost elections in 2015. Maduro lost the legislative elections. Recently, Evo Morales lost the referendum to reform the national constitution. There is a discussion about impeachment in Brazil, and we have social protests all over the country, all over the region, with massive protests from the Estados Unidos in Ecuador on the social environmental conflicts that we have, on the exploitation of the Yasunis, what they've done with all the resources that have come to the region. So what we see is that the pendulum is moving again. We still don't know, it is not clear where it is going, but it is clear that commodities, the commodity markets explain a lot of the political shifts in Latin America. So what we'll see in moving forward is how these leaders affected the natural resource policy. So we're gonna be discussing that in the following weeks. Well, thank you very much.